I'm Jack Watson, UI UX designer, illustrator, animator, donut connoisseur, and host. For the next 30 minutes, we'll be working on a foundations challenge, creating travel posters for your summer vacation or a dream destination, real or fictional, that you'd like to visit. There are links in the description below this video, including a link to download your free resources to create with us. Once you've got that downloaded, let's take a look at that starter file, opening it up in Illustrator. I've put together some notes for your reference along the side here of all the stuff that, zoomed in too far, all the stuff we're going to cover, as well as some colors to get you started. You don't have to use them, but since our focus is on the composition today, I figured they'd help us get started. The other thing that you'll notice, if we take a look over here, in our file, is that we've got some lines around our artboard. So we've got this magenta line and then we've got this red line. So we're going to be working on a file for print today. So we're using a bleed in our document, and I've got a guide set up for you to act as your safe area. So a bleed is kind of an extended area off of your trim line in print. So the trim line is going to be the artboard in this case, and then our bleed is this red line. It extends a little bit, so you can extend your artwork beyond the bounds of your trim line so that when it gets trimmed, when it gets printed, you have a little bit of extra space for the design. So if it slips at all, you don't end up with like a white line or like a paper line when you're printing. The other line here is going to be your safe zone, and that's just another kind of, if it slips at all of your content that you want to kind of be visible should be inside of those lines. So if you wanted to set up your your bleed, or you wanted to remove it under your document setup in your control bar, which is up at the top here, you can just bring this down to 0. And that's going to remove your bleed for you. So you can add a larger bleed. This is 1/16 of an inch, which is a pretty common bleed size for print, for poster print in this case. So to get started, I am going to draw out a rectangle. So we're just going to grab the rectangle tool. If you don't see it, all of your shape tools are kind of listed under these various shapes. So maybe you got the ellipse tool visible, but you're going to switch over to rectangle. And yes, I see Carol correcting me, 1/8. I misspoke. 1/16 would be used for like printing stickers. 1/8 inch would be used for printing posters. That was my mistake there. Thanks for helping me out there, Carol. And welcome in, everybody. If you want to join us in our live chat, we've got a live chat over on Behance. So you can ask questions and say hi, and on YouTube as well. I'm just going to drag out a rectangle starting from my bleed. So I want to make sure it extends from my bleed basically all the way down from the top to the bottom and across my design. So I'm going to drag out a rectangle, and I'm not being too precious about this because anything that's outside of my artboard is going to get trimmed off when I export either out my final artwork as a JPEG or a PNG if we're sharing it in our Discord, or it's going to get trimmed off when we print it out anyways. So it's not a huge deal to have it kind of extend beyond, and I'll show you in a second what that looks like. So I'm going to remove the stroke, and with my eyedropper, I'm just going to pick, feel free to pick these colors. So I'm going to pick the blue down here to get started. I'm thinking I'm going to make like a beachy themed poster for today. Again, you can make this to be kind of however you want it to be, any kind of destination that you want. So, like I said, all of this stuff on the outside is not going to be visible. If we go to View, the View menu, and hit Trim View, we're actually going to be able to see what this looks like when it exports out as a PNG or a JPEG, or after it gets kind of trimmed by the printer. So it's kind of a quick way for you to preview what your design looks like. So the stuff on the artboard, not important. I don't need to worry about it. All right, and you'll also notice in my notes over here that I've got the tool listed out for you. So we're going to be focusing on the Curvature pen tool. So over here in our tools panel, you can see we've got 2 pen tools right next to each other, the regular pen tool and the Curvature pen tool. I'm going to be making a beach or a coastline, so my lines are going to be really organic, in which case I'm going to use the Curvature pen tool. If your design is something that's going to be using more angular, for example, you can use the regular pen tool and create some more angular shapes. Maybe you're creating like a city skyline or something like that. You also can use the pen tool to create curves. It's just a little bit more advanced, and since we're going to be creating something that's entirely comprised of curves, the Curvature pen tool just makes sense today. Okay, so let's actually work on our composition now. So our composition for our poster, similar to how you might create like a character design using like a line of action, I like to think of like when I'm creating a poster design or something like that, you know, a poster design, maybe it's a postcard, a card, really anything, you know, that's got like a hierarchy to it. It can be, you know, these concepts can be used in illustration as well. I want to think about like how I want the viewer to navigate visually my design, the visual hierarchy. So I want to create a line, a leading line for my viewer's eye to kind of follow around my composition. So I want to have a focal point, and I want that leading line to lead my eye around the focal point. And a coastline is actually a really, really great way we can use that element to create a leading line around our design. So starting outside of my artboard, when I click a point, nothing's really going to happen yet with my curvature pen tool. When I create another point, however, you're going to notice that it's going to give me a preview of that curve. So as I drag, you know, up, it's going to curve this way. As I bring it down, it's going to curve over top. So as I add these points, it's going to affect the way that my line kind of curves around my design. I see a question in the chat from Robert. What is the standard size on print paper to print out before printing? That's going to vary depending on what exactly you are printing. If you are, I think I've set this to be 24 by 36, which is a fairly standard poster size. That's in inches. I'm in the US, so I'm working with inches. Although if you are in the, you know, in Europe or the rest of the world, you're going to be working with the metric system. So it's gonna depend on what you're printing. If you're printing something that's like a letter size, you're gonna use like an A4, or you know, a postcard size. It's gonna depend on what you're printing. So you might have noticed there that when after I drew this shape, I use the eyedropper tool, and I just grabbed that color to fill my shape. So what I'm thinking with how I'm doing this is not only am I creating my leading line, which is this curve of the coastline that's going to lead my viewer around my composition, I'm also thinking about depth. So when you are looking at a coastline sort of from the top down, the deepest part is going to be the darkest part of my water, which is going to be the background that I created. And I'm kind of thinking about layering these shapes up. And I've kind of helped you out here with this color palette. You could do the same thing using this color palette. This one I feel like would be really nice for like more of like a sunset or something like that. But if you're working with this one, you're gonna go from this darker blue water to this lighter yellow. And as it transitions from the darker color to the yellow, those colors are gonna mix, and you're eventually gonna get lighter and lighter until you get to the yellow sand. So the green is sort of like the yellow and the blue water kind of mixing together to create our coastline. And then from there, I'm just really gonna be layering shapes kind of on top. So I'm gonna be drawing out again with my curvature pen tool, and you don't need to be you know, super particular with this. Fortunately, like the coastline here is going to be a very organic thing, so you can kind of like generally follow it. I'm kind of working from large to small, so my shapes are going to get smaller and smaller as they approach the higher elevations. So now I've got my dark green, my lighter green. I'm going to keep going lighter and lighter. We're going to go into a lighter green now. I'm going to switch over here, and I'm just layering these shapes up. And like I said, these are going to get smaller and smaller as we go. Not that small, though. Don't go crazy. Don't go crazy, Jack. There we go. We're just going to kind of layer them up. And I'm not worrying about what's on the outside of my artboard here. Because this is all going to be trimmed off, it's not like a huge deal to have things kind of extend. Oh, one more thing. Once you reach the end, you're going to notice I'm creating closed shapes by clicking on the original point that I started with. So I started with this point over here, and when I hover over it, I'm going to get a little circle next to my icon, or next to my cursor, and when I click on that, that's going to create my closed shape. Clicking on our lighter color, so now we've got like our light water where it meets the shore. And then we're going to go to our curvature pen tool and add our last coastline. There we go. And this is going to have kind of the thinnest line of them all. There we go. Whoop. Keep accidentally clicking on my other point there. Zooming around. All right, and this is going to be our sand. So now that we've got our design kind of background laid out, let's take a look at what that looks like with the trim view. So I switch over to trim view. You're gonna see that I've created this kind of layered depth effect using the darker color in the background up through the lighter color. And this coastline, the high contrast between the darker and the lighter color, is creating a visual line, right? You don't have to make a literal line. It doesn't always have to be a literal line, but you can use elements in your illustration to lead your eye around the composition. And Keys is saying, I'm not on Discord. That's okay. If you're not well, first of all, join our Discord because it's amazing. That's where our Illustrator community hangs out. Everybody's sharing their work and providing feedback and asking questions. But if you're not in Discord, you can also share your work with us on Adobe Live. They're on Instagram. So if you tag Adobe Live on Instagram, you can share your work that way as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my trim view. So we're back to seeing our full artboard. So now we've got this all laid out, we need to add our focal point. In this case, I'm making a travel poster for a destination. So I need to put the destination name in, right? That's kind of the most important part. If you wanted to make this just an illustration, you could add, like, if your focal point was going to be like a boat out in the water, or you know, maybe some like you had like ocean silhouettes of like sea creatures or something like that under the water, you can feel free to go ahead and add those. I'm going to be doing a travel poster though, so switching over to my type tool, if I just click with my type tool, it's going to make a point text, which is like text that's sort of free flow, versus if I create a box, let me undo that, this is going to create area type, so you can see that my type kind of fills the shape that I'm creating, but I only want to make point type today, so we're going to undo that. I'm going to click, and it's really tiny, so I'm going to switch to my selection tool, and holding down Shift as I click and drag is going to constrain the size. If I don't hold down Shift, my text is going to get, you know, skewed and squished and squashed in weird ways. Which we don't actually want. So you may want that. There may be instances when you want things to not be scaled, not be constrained when you scale them. But in this case, we want to keep our text nice and constrained. All right, and if you need help with, everybody's talking about standard print sizes. Yes, if there's tons of resources out there if you were looking for like finding specific sizes for things. And actually, let me show you this while we're on the topic. If you make a new document and you go over to print, you'll actually see their print presets in Illustrator built in. So you can actually grab those standard sizes in the Illustrator File New menu. And under this print menu, it's actually going to set up your document for you for print. So it's going to have your color mode set to CMYK, and it's going to have your raster effect settings set to 300 ppi. So just a little tip for you. Anyways, now that we've got our text in here, if you need help picking fonts, I highly recommend checking out fonts.adobe.com. And I would pick a font that's going to speak to the personality of your poster, which sounds a little bit more difficult than it is, but Adobe Fonts actually, if you go into Browse All, has these categories that can be really, really helpful for picking fonts. So it's got some things that are like stylistic, like if you wanted a brush pen, or you wanted calligraphic, or you wanted sans serif or serif. So it's got these filters. But it also has things that are filtered kind of like by feel. So you've got funky or luxury or fun and friendly. So you can pick fonts based kind of like on the personality that you want your poster to captivate. Like if you were doing something for Adobe Max, maybe this is an Adobe Max poster, right? Because Adobe Max is in Miami this year. You could pick something that's kind of like has like a tropical feel to it. I'm gonna go with something that so my fictional location is gonna be the Emerald Coast, which is from Sonic Adventure, if you're familiar. So we're gonna go with a fictional video game location, which is fine. It can be real or fictional. It's totally up to you what you decide to do with your poster. And so I've set my text on 2 lines just by hitting return when I type my text, because I'm working with point text, so it's going to move that down for me. And then I'm going to grab my eyedropper, and I'm going to start by picking my lightest color. because this is the focal point, I really want my focal point to have high contrast and stand out nicely over that background. So got my leading line leading me to the text, but I'm also making it really, really stand out powerfully against that darker background by having the contrast be really strong between those two colors. And then I'm just gonna pick a font. I've already picked a font, to be honest with you. I think it's called, I'm messed up how to pronounce it. I think it's Marseilles. There it is, Marseille, M-A-R-S-E-I-L-L-E. It's an Adobe font, and I'm gonna pick a bold. I think this just works really well with like the minimal style of my poster, but you know, again, feel free to pick something that goes with the style of the poster that you're creating. The other thing that I want to point out is that I'm using my text is paragraph left aligned. And that's actually, it's working out in my favor with my leading line because I end up having equal amounts of space around my text as this coastline kind of curves over here. So I'm kind of fitting my text with like a text wrap to the coastline. So now I'm leading the viewer towards that text. I've got high contrast, it's bold, and I'm kind of making it fit into that space using the coastline. You know, if we wanted to, if our coastline was kind of shaped differently, you know, we could have it kind of center aligned if we had maybe another element, maybe there's another piece of the coastline kind of poking through here, so it kind of forms like a river, or maybe there's like an island over here. Or if our coastline was on the opposite side and we flipped this, we'd want to have our text kind of right aligned. So just kind of another thing to consider. Just giving you options to consider when you're putting together your composition to really help your compositions have a good visual hierarchy. Again, like visual hierarchy meaning the elements that you want to focus on stand out really well. Then you've got like, you know, as we add details, those are going to have like lower hierarchy compared to our focal point. So speaking of, now we've got kind of the main portion of our illustration done. You can feel free to add details to this. Just make sure that the details that you add don't take away from the focal point that you've created. So for example, we could add like some little umbrellas along the coast or something like that. I'm gonna add a little whale silhouette, which works really nicely with, if you know anything about Sonic Adventures, there's like a whale. So we're gonna draw a little whale. And I promise you this is gonna be easy, but if you're new to Illustrator, this may take a couple of watch throughs. So we're gonna switch to our ellipse tool. We can use simple shapes for this whale. I'm just gonna draw out a long ellipse. Remember, our whale is gonna be from the top down. So you know, you're only gonna see like the body of the whale and then like the little fins and the little tail sticking out. So I'm just scrolling through to make sure I'm not missing any chat. Oh, Keys is suggesting we add towels with sprinkles. I love that idea. I do love donuts. All right, so we've got the body of our whale. Now, super easy. Again, we're only gonna be using shapes for this. I'm gonna switch to the star tool. I'm gonna draw out a star. And what I'm gonna hold down Shift, so again, I'm kind of constraining it. I'm gonna keep this shape constrained. So we've got our star. And when I'm working on building things out with simple shapes, I like to think about like, how can I take things that I have access to, you know, easy to grab simple shapes from this menu and modify them to create what I need. So you may be thinking, why in the world did you add a star? That doesn't make any sense. How are you gonna make this look like a whale? But if I drag it over top, now you start to see the magic, right? So we're gonna take our star shape, we're gonna drag it down here. And now with our pen tool, the same way that we can add points to our pen, or our shapes, we can build shapes, we can actually modify and take away using the pen tool. So with my pen tool selected, I'm going to start to tap on these points that I don't actually need. So I'll click on this one. You can see it makes a little minus next to my cursor. It's a little bit hard to see, but we're just going to click. And now we'll move that one too. So now we've created the tail shape for our whale. And this is where you would be able to kind of squash and stretch your shape. So maybe we want to squish this down a little bit for our tail. And then we can use the same shape for our fins as well. So I'm going to copy, Command C, Command or Control C is going to copy. It's going to copy to our pasteboard, invisible pasteboard. And then Command or Control F in this case. Command or Control V is copy and paste. But if we just paste, it's going to move it all the way over there. Paste in front, which is Command or Control F, makes a copy in front. So I'm copying and pasting in front so that it's in the same position. Then we're going to bring it up here, and my fins are a little bit small, so I'm going to scale them up holding down Shift to constrain, and then I can squash this a little bit. So now we've created our fun little whale. And now, in order to make this easier on us, we're going to make this whole set of shapes a group. So I can, if I try to move these around, it's going to get really annoying if I don't group them. So I'm just going to hold down Shift with the selection tool and select all three of these guys. And again, hit Command or Control, depending on if you're on Mac or Windows, and hit G. So that Command or Control G. And by the way, all these shortcuts are next to the options. So if we look in our drop-down menu for the object menu, you can see group is shows the keyboard shortcut for your Command G. All right, so like I said, we want these elements that we add, any additional design elements, we want them to enhance or tell more of the story and enhance our composition. So my whale, in this case, I can use this to kind of help point the viewer even further towards my focal point, which is the text. So I'm going to grab the eyedropper. I'm going to grab my dark blue. So my whale's going to disappear briefly. And there's two ways you can go about doing this next part. You can either double click on your fill color. You can make it a little bit darker. The other option, is to go into the transparency window. And you can change this to a darkening blending mode. So you can go with a multiply. So really it's kind of up to you. I'm just going to go with a slightly darker blue. So now we got our whale silhouette, right? Again, thinking about our depth, the whale is going to be deeper underneath the water, so it's going to be darker. And we're going to just use this. We're going to grab our selection tool. I'm going to scale it down a little bit, and I'm just going to point it towards my text. So again, now my whale has kind of become like an arrow almost, even though it's not a literal arrow. It's a visual arrow. It's acting as a pointer towards my main focal point there. All right, we have like a couple more minutes, so I'm going to show you one more thing really fast, and that is if you want to take this to the next level. I'm going to add a little bit more depth to my poster by selecting my coastline, holding down Shift, and I'm going to select all of my shapes from my coastline. I'm going to add a little bit of an effect to this. I'm going to go to Effect, Stylize, Drop Shadow. When I do that, it's going to add shadows underneath of each of my shapes. I think this might already be set up how I wanted to, yeah. So let me just kind of show you with like the default setup here. So for this, I actually don't want any offset. So I'm going to set my offset to 0 because I want my drop shadow to be centered underneath my shapes. And I'm going to decrease the opacity a bit. And when I hit OK, it's going to actually make this like a layered paper effect. I have it set, it's by default set to multiply, which is going to darken. If you wanted to make this a specific color, you change it to normal so that it's not a darkening blending mode. And then you could set your color in your color picker. Okay, once you're happy with your design, you're ready to share it with everybody on Discord, you're going to want to save out a PNG or JPEG. We're going to export for screens, and we're going to want to just save this to our desktop. And then you're going to navigate to our Discord. You can find the link below in the description of the video. And once you're here, you can check out what everybody's been working on. You just drag your artwork right to the Discord window, and there it goes. Sent it off so everybody can give me feedback in the Discord. Unfortunately, we are like right at the end of time. As always, thank you so much for working with me today. This was a Foundations challenge in Illustrator. We went over the Curvature pen tool, shapes, creating strong composition using leading lines and visual hierarchy, and we also talked about creating a focal point. Again, find the descriptions below to the Discord and to our starter files and other challenges right below me. If you want to join and hang out with us. If you're joining on the replay, leave a comment if you have any questions on YouTube, and if you are having trouble accessing Discord, you can always share your work with us on Instagram, just tagging at Adobe Live. We're live once a week. We're moving to Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific next time, but still here on behance.net/Adobe Live and on the Adobe Live YouTube. But stay here for more great content on this Graphic Design Tuesday right after me. All right, bye everyone.